Hello, 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 everybody. Thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Kingdom Talks. I have a special co-host today by the name of Caleb. But before I get to my special co-host, I'd just like to thank the viewership and the listeners out there for tuning in and downloading the episodes on Spotify, Apple, our YouTube viewership. We're kind of building that from the ground up. So whenever you guys see the episode on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. I just want to also honor Pedro, my man. I love him. He's always up for supporting the cause and just allowing this to happen. So I'm very grateful for him for letting us, use his place to really set this platform up. So I'm really appreciative of him. So shouts to Pedro, shouts to the barbershop and everyone involved in the barbershop. And we kind of have a live audience right now. So shouts to Rebecca's in the building, Christian's in the building. Tyler's here in spirit. He couldn't make it, but he'll be back in an episode real soon. So yeah, Caleb, what's good, bro?
What's good, bro? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being part of this, man. For always supporting me behind the scenes. So I really do appreciate it. This episode kind of came about through a table talk conversation that you and I were having at church. So I felt that it was only right to bring you here and talk about the topic in hand. But before we do, just tell the people your name, what you do, and
yeah. So my name is Caleb. I am the youth pastor at Anchor Church.
Shout out to Anchor Church.
Shout out to Anchor Church, man. Shout out to Pastor Sean and Teresa. So I'm a pastor there. I do youth ministry. We're a 1-year-old church. Our ministry been there for 6 months, and we just been thriving there. I was raised in Miami, 305. That's my city. That's my town. I love it. I'm a Miami Heat fan, Miami Hurricane, Miami Marlins. I'm Miami everything. Miami Dolphins. We're gonna win the Super Bowl one day. So,
one day.
So I prophesied that. So, but other than that, that's everything about me. Pretty much.
Yeah, man, that's what's up. I can't say the same about Miami and Florida teams because I wasn't raised here. I'm a diehard New Yorker, so New York everything, man. Unfortunately, or fortunately, because the Knicks have been struggling forever. But it is what it is. So yeah, I'm excited about the topic. I kind of titled this topic "The State of the Church Culture," and the reason why is because wherever you go around the church sphere, at any church really, whether it be conservative, non-denominational, or what have you, there's always a sense of the culture, the worldly culture bleeding into the church culture. And that's not to say that it's for the good or for the bad. It's just that's something that we kind of want to address and talk about because we want to also at the same time, in that same breath, kind of just check ourselves really. And
right.
I always say it on this show that this show is not about calling people out. It's actually to call people up.
Right. That's
especially if you call yourself a believer.
That's right.
And someone who serves at a church. And no church is perfect.
That's right.
As Caleb knows very well. Right.
No church is perfect at all.
Right.
So
right.
Every church got its flaws. Every church makes a certain kind of mistake. But at the end of the day, if you're about just the kingdom. Like, if you're in the business of like, hey, at the end of the day, we want to make the kingdom look great. We want to honor God and glorify God. That's all that matters. So
that's a fact. So that being said, as far as the church culture, especially for those churches who consider themselves a young, hip church, right? It gets a little difficult because a lot of people, he's already looking at me. There's a lot of people that struggle with differentiating what's good, what's bad, what's not to say, what's politically correct. Because we live in a PC culture as well,
right.
And we live in this cancel culture as well. So whatever we say as Christians, I think it's amplified times a million because we're held to such a high standard.
Right.
So how do you feel about that?
Man, I think one of the things that I think personally that a lot of hip churches or churches that are young that have problem with is authenticity, right? Like they're not authentic enough. Because if you go around a lot of hip churches, all the identity is found in the same. So a lot of young churches or hip churches don't want to create their own identity.
Yeah.
You know, they want to find like their own place of what they're good at.
Right.
What do we need to do to reach out to people?
Right.
So I think that's the issue of a lot of churches, that we're not real enough. You know, we don't want to be real. We don't want to, you know, be honest and be truthful and be, most importantly, be vulnerable.
Right.
Not just up on platform, but off a platform.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And with our leaders and our volunteers. So I think that's a lot of things that I have seen churches done, is that they more base their success on numbers than discipleships.
That's
you
a
know?
fact.
And I think that's so it fails us as an example. It's like before you asked me to come here, I did a lot of research, and one of the research I did was about religion. Is that Christianity is the number one religion, right? But if you ask yourself, out of all those 1 billion people that are religion, how many people follow Christ?
Right.
You know, how many people are disciples? How many people are going out and do what God told them to do? So I think that's the issue that I have seen in a lot of churches, that a lot of churches struggles with identity and putting their foundation right with Christ. So I have seen it a lot, you know?
Yeah, I've seen it too firsthand as well, because I've hopped around small churches and big churches here in South Florida. And so I've seen it more so in bigger churches, unfortunately, because when you deal with a bigger church and it's a bigger platform, it's more people, more eyes on you, and a lot of the young leaders there get caught up in the hype. You know, they get lost in the sauce. And again, no one's perfect. There's no perfect churches, but I think that a thriving church is a church that does community for real.
That's right.
Like, not just saying it and preaching it, and then when you're off platform, no one's doing community.
That's right.
I've seen that too, where they preach community and there's no community outside those confines of those four walls.
That's right.
So I feel that with intentionality, as far as the leaders that are in these churches, goes a long way. Like, when you're intentional with someone, like even with a text message, right?
Right.
I would rather get a text from a singular person than being part of a group chat, because it takes the intimacy away. So, like, if I text you personally and I say, "Yo, what's up, Kate? You good?" That's more personal. Because like, yo, Javi actually took the time out to reach out to me to check how I was doing. But if you're in by all means, I'm not trying to dig on people that are in group chats, because I'm in a couple.
Right.
I'm in a couple, so I'll be first to admit that I got a couple group chats going on. Some of them get crazy, but it's that intimacy, man, like that intentionality that goes a long way. And I think when you become that leader that helps build other leaders, that's the true definition of a leader. And I see that in you, so I honor you for that, because you are about, you know, building people. And like you said, it's not really about numbers, it's about
it's about the community. Because what happens is, especially like how you said with bigger churches, is that what happens is that people come into church and the main thing they see is just that, oh wow, this is awesome, this looks nice, this looks great, you know what, I'm gonna surrender my life to Christ. But automatically then we say, all right, get into a community, get into a connect group. And it doesn't happen. And I think the reason why is because we as churches don't push that enough, right? One of the biggest thing that I was reading scripture about is that the first thing that Jesus did, yes, he did a miracle, but the next thing that Jesus did is that he went to go find 12 disciples. Yeah. And out of those 12 disciples, those were his community, right? So if Jesus needed people, you can't be free, right? You can't be free on your own, right? So if Jesus needs community, we need community, right? And I think that's the important part of it. And I think, I just wish we as the big C, right, that we always call ourselves the big C, I wish we embody that, like, community is number one. It's so crucial. It's so important.
It is really, really crucial, because even the Bible says that Jesus is about the unified church. It is. The unified people, and the enemy is actually out here trying to divide us. Right. Because he knows our desire, our fleshly desires. That's right. He knows that we fall short. The enemy knows that we got egos, and some people are more egocentric than others, which is completely fine. But he knows that we have these fleshly desires. So through those fleshly desires, we fall in those pits where we get caught up in platform. We get caught up in the hype. We get caught up in the I guess you could say the glitz and glamour of the culture, of the church culture, because you get so focused on putting on a great show that we forget that there's a great message in the gospel, right?
That's right.
So I just feel like that is something that it may be lacking in leadership, and I hope that whomever's listening to this convicts them really.
Yeah,
in
and
a
I
loving
hope
way.
and another thing that I hope that this conversation does is that for people who thinks that, oh yeah, social media, the way how those pastors dress, the way how those pastors live like, and everything like that. Now I want to go be a senior pastor, and I want to go be a lead pastor.
Right.
If that's your goal, if that's what you're trying to do as a lead pastor, just to get the fame,
You're missing out.
you're missing out. You're missing the main idea. You're missing the main point because it's not about that. It's about the people. You know, one of the things I love that Sean said is that how do you look like your sheep, right? Do you smell like your sheep, right? Because that's what the point of a shepherd is to pastor somebody. Yeah. So if I'm pastoring my students every single Wednesday, not just Wednesday, but on a daily, if I'm pastoring my leaders, am I smelling like them? Right. Am I living like them? Yeah. You know, am I breathing the, you know, am I getting that kind of environment around them? So that's the biggest thing I would say is that people think that, and I'm gonna be even more real, people think that ministry is fun. It's not fun. It's a lot of work. It's a burden. Like I'm gonna be real with you. It's not like people that sees the lights, people that see the cameras, people that see the whole 360 and everything like that. That's what you see on stage. Yeah. But behind the stage, oh my gosh, it is the painful. Because you're not just dealing with yourself physically, but spiritually. Because we're not just battling your demons, but we're battling our demons. And that is the most situation that I have seen. So when people be like, oh yeah, I'm called to ministry, I always ask them, I'm like, are you? Like, do you really want to be called to ministry? Because don't say it's just a thing where you just went to a conference and you're like, oh my gosh, this was amazing, and I believe that God. No, like, is God really calling you to it? Because that's what you have to see. Because ministry is grinding. It's the grit. It's the sweat. It's the blood. It's the tears. Yeah. And to be honest with you, it's the things, the days that you just wake up in the morning, you're just like, oh my gosh, man.
Because I could just imagine, like, sometimes you wake up and you say, do I really want to do this?
Bro, for real.
Because you start questioning it. And I think that's where you lean more on God.
Yes.
For that strength.
Yes.
For that wisdom.
Yes.
For everything that He can provide for you to be a better leader and for you to actually lead with love.
That's right.
I had a conversation with a buddy of mine who's Christian, and he was saying that we lack the equation. We get the equation wrong. The equation should always, like the main denominator of the equation of what we do in this life that we call a Christian life is love. And if you do anything, you got to, especially leading, you got to lead not only well, but allow Jesus to lead you, and so that way you can lead with love. Because if you're not going to lead with love, you're not going to truly build disciples. Because that's the Great Commission, right? The Great Commission is making disciples of all nations.
Yes.
Right? And you have to be intentional with whom you're around. And it doesn't matter if you're black, white, or indifferent. Right. It's everyone. Everyone is not exempt from the gospel. Right. And sometimes, and it could be through fears. It's probably not necessarily your internal biases when it comes to engaging with different people from different walks of life. It's sometimes just fear. Right. It's just people are scared to just talk to people. Right. And a single conversation can change someone's perspective. Right. And it'll be welcoming. Right. And it's going to want them to come back to whatever church you are. Right. You're either in staff or serving at, because I feel that statistically still in 2021, there's more people leaving the church than staying or even walking through those doors. Right.
And the reason why is because COVID. Like, and I'm not like, people talk about
made a lot of people
lazy, right? But
I'm just gonna keep it 100.
Yeah, but here's the thing that I realized about COVID. Like, there's a lot of negative things that I realized about COVID that I'm just like, people losing their life, losing jobs and everything. But I think what COVID has done has shifted a lot of people who are Christians, and they open their eyes and they're realizing, bro, we're not getting the real thing. The message that's being spoken is not real. Yeah. It's not truth. It's like, man, they're not being blunt with me. Like, they're not speaking the life that I should be speaking. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, like, everybody around me are seasonal friends. Yeah. You know, they're not lifetime friends.
I think COVID honestly exposed a lot of things.
Yeah, a lot of things, you know.
And good and bad.
Good and bad. But when it comes with our church wise, it had exposed a lot of things. Like, for instance, like, everybody who been doing online churches, like, it had exposed on that level. Like, now that online churches is more happening than people that are coming in, you start to realize, like, oh my gosh, like, what have we done? You know, like, is this what Jesus talked about, you know, in the Bible? Is just what
Right.
Jesus was talking about being the church. You know what I mean? And so that's what I have seen a lot that's going on in our church that we're lacking of. And when you say about discipleship, that's the biggest important thing. You know, I ask anybody, like, if you're in charge of a ministry, if you're in charge, a leader of a ministry, like, are you discipling?
Right.
Are you discipling not just the young adults, not just the students, not just the kids, but your leaders? Are you discipling your leaders? Because that's so important. And I do that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I go to my leaders, I'd be like, hey, what can we do better? What can I do to help you do better? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is your goal that you're trying to chase? You know, like, what is God trying to do for you? Because I'm your leader. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I get held accountable for everything that's going to be done here. Yeah. Why? Because I'm a pastor. I'm leading you. You know what I'm saying? And I can't lead you to astray. I got to lead you where God has for you. Yeah, and I think that's what the churches need to have.
Yeah,
you know?
For sure. And that's and exactly what you're saying is essentially the byproduct of what you just said is creating another leader. Because there's only so much Caleb's to go around, right? You're only one Caleb.
One Caleb.
And you can only be stretched out so much. Right. So I think we are called to build other leaders and not get so worried about, oh, well, he's going to take my spot.
Right. No.
Miss me with that noise, right?
Right.
You know, what do you mean? I want you to thrive. I want you to be a leader. I want you to be a leader in your community.
Right.
You know, because I think community leaders are so important as well because there's so many dying souls out there that are constantly searching. And if you become a beacon of hope, a beacon of light in your own community, that goes a long way. And of course, God is going to honor that.
Right.
And you never know where God's going to take that until you go through those steps.
That's right.
And stuff like that. So that is definitely something that we need to always hold ourselves accountable for and communicate that and verbalize that amongst our leadership.
Right.
You and I happen to go to the same church.
Right.
So we always, like, the fiber of our culture that we're trying to build, being that we're a baby church still, is that culture. Like, we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to be honest with one another.
Yes.
And you even touched it over the weekend that we just got to be some men, right?
Right.
It's not putting people on a pedestal. It's not putting XYZ person on a pedestal. It's just being some men willing to do the grind, work, and love on people. Exactly.
And is that and that's what, you know, I was talking about that on our Devo, is that about the paralyzed men, and, you know, they were called some men. And I always tell this around, like, when I wake up in the morning, I always tell myself, like, all right, am I ready to be some men? Like, am I ready to not receive the credit? Like, for example, like, we can, like, youth is thriving, right? But do I expect Pastor Sean to come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, Pastor Caleb, you're doing amazing, you're doing all that kind of stuff? Like, if I'm looking for that, then I'm not doing what God has told me to do. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like, so that's what I have to tell people is like, are you serving to get credit from the lead pastor? Or are you serving because you really know that God has convicted you and you know that you are meant to be a faithful servant? You know what I mean? So that's what I have seen.
Because I feel like, and I'm guilty of it. I feel like we sometimes don't correlate worshiping and serving. Right? We don't correlate those two.
Yeah, we don't.
And when we serve with excellence, love, and all these things, we're actually doing it out of worship to the Lord. We're not doing it for likes and comments and accolades. Those are nice. Yes. I like a nice pat on the back from time to time.
Absolutely.
But I'm not. I've learned that I'm not doing it for that. I'm literally doing it to worship the God that saved me from the darkness that I was in and stuff like that. So we missed that. We definitely missed that correlation. Serving is not a duty. Serving is not a job or a chore. I think serving, in my personal opinion, I can only speak for myself. I don't know if you can agree, but it is worship. Yeah. It's a lifestyle. Like, worship is... I read it somewhere online. It said, worship is more than just a song. Yeah. Right? It's more than just a song. Yeah. And although we love to raise our hands and go dancing on stage and being on the pulpit and listening to our favorite worship songs, it's more than a song. Right. And being intentional about being friends with whomever is very important as well, because I've been to churches, and you've been to different churches, and churches get cliquey, just like
Quick.
in high school.
Quick.
In high school, there's cliques everywhere, man.
Quick.
And I started becoming not a fan of that, and so it was hard to really approach certain people when it came to that. Like, hey, man, like we got to stop with this.
Right.
Like we got group of people here that are constantly going their own way, and
Right.
once we are asked to leave the facility, they leave the other people on the wayside, and they're feeling like, yo, we're like, what about us, kind of thing. And we have these different groups and different cliques,
Right.
And that's a difficult thing to approach because you're kind of sort of treading in murky waters because you don't want to offend people. Like, yo, what do you mean?
Right.
What do you mean? What are you talking about? I talk to that person, or I do this, and what are you talking about? I hang around, but you may do a lot of this and not follow through, and I think people lack in the follow through.
Right. Yep. That's so good. You know what I realized, that what Jesus did, his whole mission was to make people not feel comfortable anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody he was talking to, he was trying to make them feel uncomfortable. Like, yo, like this is what y'all been living like, but no, I'm gonna get you uncomfortable. Like this is what God says.
So much because of that.
Yeah, and that's what and that's what's so amazing about it. So like one of the things I tell people, like who, like for example, like I'm just using our church as an example. Mm-hmm. When Sean preaches, he preaches truth and realness. Can I tell you something? There are people that leave that church that are just so uncomfortable. They're like, oh man, I'm uncomfortable right now. We're in the series of temptation. Like, why is he talking about that? I'm uncomfortable, and I'm just like, well. People walked out of Jesus' message. Mm-hmm. In the middle of his message, people walked out. Because why? Because you can't make everybody happy.
Right.
You can't because if your goal is to make everybody happy, then your church starts to move a certain way. It starts to not be more spiritual. It doesn't connect with line with the Holy Spirit no more. Because now you're just about making people happiness better rather than following the mission that God has set in stone for you. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I say, and as far as the clickiness, like I ask that all the time. Is that are you being cliquey because you're genuinely happy that you have community, or are you being cliquey because you just want to just diminish the ministry of what is going on? Yeah. You know what I mean? So I ask that people all the time. Like
I ask myself a lot.
I ask that myself that all the time. I'm like, am I just creating clickiness because I just want to be seen?
Because I be catching myself like, yo, I'm always hanging out with
the same
people, and I don't want to drop. This is not a show about name dropping or anything like that.
Right.
But we do want to challenge those who are listening. That know us pretty well and that don't know us, and that people that are like that. And you touched on it about doing clickiness out of just happiness that you're a part of something and you're just clicky, or are you being clicky because you're avoiding being uncomfortable with a certain group of people, maybe, or a certain creed of people, or whatever the case may be. The reason why I even started this podcast is to start dialogue, and I think there's so much power in dialogue because I've seen conversations. I've been part of dialogues and witnessed dialogues that literally saved lives.
Right.
Like from the brinks of suicide.
Right.
Like I've seen that in real life. So I'm a firm believer in dialogue, but on that same breath, I also would want to say that. We have to challenge each other. Yeah. And if it becomes uncomfortable, let's just get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, like, that's what Jesus did.
Got to.
He got people uncomfortable, but he was intentional with it in such a loving way, right? Such a loving way. So, like, the dialogue, let's start there. Let's start there. Let's just get comfortable being uncomfortable, and at the bare minimum, we can part ways with respect.
Right.
With just respecting one another. You stand on one side of the topic at hand, and I stand on the left. You stand on right, I stand on left, but at least you know where I came from, and I at least know where you come from, and at the bare minimum, we could probably agree to disagree, but we can still have respect, and we can still bear each other and hang out and do the things that we like to do.
Exactly.
And there won't be no issues.
Exactly.
But unfortunately, people don't go above and beyond to really love on people, and then their excuses like, oh, but this person is this, and this person is that, and they're so hard to love.
Right.
And I don't think I'm suitable to just talk to that certain person.
Right.
And maybe that may be true. That may be true because there are people who are hard to love. There are people who are for lack of a better term, weirdos.
Yeah.
But and I say it respectfully.
Right.
I say respectfully. I don't say it to dig on people. But some people are just not sociable and they're not approachable.
Right.
So, like, how we navigate our dialogue is definitely a tool that we need to utilize more rather than just avoiding conversation.
Right. And I think that when I say uncomfortable, I don't mean judging.
Right.
I think that's where a lot of Christians and a lot of people get it wrong. It's like, when I'm telling you that I'm trying to get you uncomfortable, it's not that I'm trying to judge you.
Yeah.
It's that we need to be uncomfortable together because we need to take it to the next level.
Yeah,
we can't stay here.
That's how you strengthen.
Exactly. That's
how
the
Bible says iron sharpens iron, right?
Exactly.
And it hurts to go through that refinery of the fire that you and that person may go through, and you and that person challenging one another to sharpen one another. It's going to hurt. It's going to have some growing pains there, but you're going to love that person so much more because you're like, man, if it wasn't for XYZ person, I wouldn't be here today.
Right.
And we need to have more of those success stories when it comes to discipleshiping and friendships in the church culture, because we sometimes hear a lot of people just getting burned and then they blame the church. And I got burned by the church, and I got burned by the church, and this church is not great, and it gives us a bad rep, right? So at the same time, like, we want to protect the integrity that we have, but also protect the integrity of the church that you belong to, because we were passionate about what we do, but we're mainly passionate about Jesus at the end of the day. So those things I feel that are weeded out through conversation, nothing else. Not in a blog, not on the comments of someone's picture, not gossiping, not talking about that person behind their back. If you got something to say to that person, say it to them.
Right.
Call them up and be like, hey man, I got something to talk to you about it. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe I misunderstood it, and I just like to talk to you about it, rather than you going to your friend at work, or your friend at your youth group, or your friend at your crew that you go to, and start talking about buddy that rubbed you the wrong way at service the other day. You know what I mean? Because we're all human, and we all misconstrue things. We sometimes take things out of context, right? Right. And I think that to avoid those situations and avoid assumptions, right? Be intentional about conversation. Right. I remember Mike Todd one time said, "Don't assume, because when you do, you become you become a person that the first three letters of that word are spelled, and that's ASS. You make an ASS out of yourself if you keep assuming." Shout out to Mike Todd. Right. But he said that, and it's so true. Right. It's so true, and like, we got to stop assuming.
Always.
Stop assuming.
We got to stop assuming, and that's where I talk about just with the church, man. It's just that I always tell myself this: when I leave on Sunday, when I leave at Anchor, like, am I representing not just Anchor Church, but am I representing the church? Because church is not about the building. Right. Like, if anybody's listening right now, church is not about the building. Mm-hmm. The church is you. It's you who you get and gathering with, right? It's you in this community. Like, for example, like, it's just what we just did 30 minutes ago before this all was set up. Like, we just had church. Pedro's out here cutting hair and then just speaking life to us. Right. That's church. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I tell people it's not about the building, it's about you. So that's why I tell people, like, I would never forget. This happened, true story, in Miami, where I was an intern at this church in Miami. And I was just being a goofball, a knucklehead, a troublemaker, all this kind of stuff. And the pastor sat down with me, and he was just like, "Hey, I need your badge back." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're not going to be at the church no more." And I was like, "Why do you say that?" And he was like, "Because you're interrupting the vision that God has laid before me. You're interrupting the vision." And when he said that, it hit me so hard, because I was like, wow. Like, I'm being part of a problem rather than the solution. Yeah. So I'm not bringing no solution to the church. Right. I'm not bringing no solution within myself. Instead, when I was in Miami and I would just go out, I would just, like, go to a bar and drink. So I'm not being part of the solution. I'm being part of the problem. Right. So that's why I ask yourself, like, are you going to... You can't say that, oh, yeah, I'm going to accept Jesus, but on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday, I'm going to do my thing. But come Sunday, I'm going to worship all I want. Right. But gets back on Monday, I'm going to be this. You cannot do that.
And it's a vicious cycle, for real.
It is.
It is a vicious cycle.
It's just like the Matrix. Like I tell people perfect example. It's just like the Matrix. It's the red pill or the blue pill. Once you take the red pill, you can't go back. You know what I'm saying? Like, your eyes have now shifted. Your eyes has now more open. So that's why when people say, this is why I'm going into the judging. when people say like, oh, you don't have the right to judge me, can I tell you something? This is a true story. If you look at 1 Corinthians, I have the right to judge you. That's if you follow Jesus.
Right.
If you're my brothers and sister in Christ, I have the right to judge you. I don't have the right to judge somebody that just comes into the church that's a non-believer.
Right.
I cannot do that. And if you look in the Old Testament with Elijah, that's what he did. You remember the Mount Carmel thing when he was confronting the 400 prophets of Baal?
Yeah.
If you read before it, there was the 400 prophets of Asherah. He didn't confront to the 4 prophets of Asherah because the 4 prophets of Asherah never devoted their life to Christ. They never devoted life to God. So that's why I said, that's why when people get upset about like, you can't judge me, Caleb. You don't have the right to say that. No, I do. Yeah. I have that authority to tell you what you're doing wrong.
And I think that word too has become such a trigger for people.
It does.
Again, we live in 2021. It's a PC culture. My grandfather calls it the era of the wussies. My grandpa's old school. He's an old timer. Shout out to you, Grandpa.
You need to bring him in the podcast.
But man, like he just says, like we're just a bunch of wimps, man.
Right.
We get hurt over just silliness, and I think that I'm like in the middle, man, because I know because I empathize, right? And I understand that the generation that comes before me, right? They know what they know, right? They're the byproducts of today's culture, especially Western culture here in the United States, right? Right. It's very privileged. It's very consumption based. Generation.
Right.
We're behind screens 99.9% of the time.
Right.
We're always consuming things. We're always seeing things. We always want things right away.
Right.
And I've mentioned this in the prior episode. If you're a member of Amazon Prime, you don't wait anymore.
Heck no.
you don't wait no more. You literally.
I want it now.
You literally get a knock on your door the next day.
That's right.
And so we're living in this generation of entitlement, a very sensitive generation, and so. I have to be aware of that, mindful of that for sure. Self-awareness is key, right? Self-awareness.
Right. It is.
Knowing your audience is also a tool. It's also a gift that you can definitely sharpen, because I believe you can work on that. That you just have to be wanting to. You want to learn and sharpen yourself and your skills to know your audience. Because if you're going to walk in a room and not know your audience, you may say things that are going to just rub people the wrong way. Oh. And then you're going to realize, oh man, I didn't know that you guys were praying for so-and-so, and she's having a meltdown.
Right. I do it all the time.
She's crying, and you're over here talking about
all the time
gibberish and nonsense and making a mockery of whatever, and you didn't realize that something was going on. Right. So you got to definitely be self-aware. You have to definitely know your audience. Yeah. And when it comes to engaging with people, you just have to get to a point where, man, I just want to do what Jesus does.
Right.
I want to follow his blueprint. Right. And if I stay there and I navigate there, I can't go wrong. Right. And if someone has a problem with that, then that's where, instead of, friction, it's more, let's talk about it. Right. Let's sit down and talk about it then. Right. Clearly there's a problem. That's right. Let's talk about it. But then people say, oh no, he's judging me. Yeah. Oh no, this person doesn't like me. Or, okay, let's replace, if that word triggers you, let's replace judging with challenging. Right. Let me challenge you then. Right. Let me challenge you and just talk about it.
And that's what I would say is, like, all the time, like, one of the things, and I gotta learn too, because I ain't gonna lie, I'm loudmouth. You feel me? So I, you know what I'm saying? Like I just blurt out stuff, and I forget, what's around me. The surrounding me. But I think with this generation and the generation right now, I get so passionate about it, because this generation, I call them loud. Like, they're the most loud generation ever. When I mean they speak up to something that is wrong, like, for example, like, if it's okay if I could say this, but homosexuality, like, the reason why back in our days, like, being social homosexual, like being gay or lesbian, stuff like that wasn't okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, people just looked at you weird. People looked at you a certain different way. Yeah. But this generation had made it so accepted. Yeah. And the reason why, because they're loud, right? Just like this vote that happened, people voting. Like, our generation voted so much. Why? Because they're loud. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's such a positive thing, because if we just teach our generation that's currently growing up right now and just get it and just teach them who Jesus is and how to live like Jesus, I guarantee you they'll be loud about Jesus. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But we have to be the one to take that initiative. We have to be the one to step in. And that's why it's so crucial for our church to step in and be real with them and be honest. Because right now that I tell people is, especially when I'm on Wednesday night, my students are never looking for like fake stuff. They know when I'm fake. Yeah. Like, there's one time I was preaching and it was like, Caleb, why you acting fake? I was like, whoa. I said, what are you talking about? Like, that wasn't good enough for you? No, bro, you was fake. I was like, wow. And that's why I realized, like, you know what? They're not looking for no fluffy message. No. They ain't looking for no fluffy, like, word.
Yeah,
like,
they kind of spot that, like the wishy-washy stuff.
Instantly.
They spot that from a mile away. Man.
A mile away. And that's why I realized, you know what? No, they're looking for the truth. You know, they're looking for the real deal. Mm-hmm. They're looking for the real puff, the powerful message. So that's what I would say, man. That's what we have to do better. And I'll tell you now is that I'm not perfect, you know? Like, I'm a youth pastor. You know, I'm grateful to be a youth pastor. There's days I'm like, Sean, I don't know why you have me as youth pastor, but that's why I go to my team. I go to my team all the time and I tell them, hey, what am I lacking? What am I weak at? What am I doing?
That's accountability.
Yeah, it's accountability, and that's why I tell them, because can I be real with you? The churches I have been at, not a lot of leaders do that. You know, they think they had it all. Yeah. So that was the first thing. Every time I meet with my leaders once a month, I tell them, what can I do better for you? Yeah. What can I do better as this ministry? Yeah. I need to know because it's not about me. Yeah. You know, I'm in a position where I'm leading you and these students. Mm-hmm. So now that I'm a leader, I need you to tell me what I'm lacking of. Right. Because you carry my blind spot. You see what I don't see. So if you think that, hey, Caleb, like, I feel like, the way how you engage in the message could be a little different, then tell me. You know what I mean? So that's why I say all the time, it's like, hey, what am I lacking of? Javier, what am I lacking of? Christian, what am I lacking of? Right. You know, I go to all my team. What am I lacking of? Right. What can I do better? Yeah. You know, and I just wish that churches can do that with other churches, because we all say that we're the big C church. We're all unified, but can I be real with you? We're all divided. Mm-hmm. A lot of our churches are divided. Yeah. And you just said it so clearly, is that the enemy is in the business of division, not unifying. Mm-hmm. And can you imagine if our church were to wake up and just say, you know what? Let us all be unified. Let us all together. Let us all come together in one name. It does not matter about what denomination we believe. Yeah. Let's all come under the name of Jesus. I guarantee you our nation will look a lot different. Absolutely. But we never want to do that. I don't know why.
It starts with self. Yeah. Honestly, it starts with you. It's not pointing your finger at your leaders. Right. It's not pointing your finger at your friends. It's not pointing your finger at your crew leader and things of that nature. It's literally just taking your fingers and using more thumbs, right? So just
so good, Javi.
Pull your finger, put thumbs at your chest and say, what can I do different that will challenge my peers and be better? Because at the end of the day, it's just being better. Because the gospel doesn't need to be complex. It's a simple message, right? A simple message and
simple message, simple. Like, why? I tell people, Jesus only had one message. Mm-hmm. Like, he ain't had no 55 series, no sermon bumpers. He had one message. Yeah. Absolutely. So when I see that, I'm like, hold up, one message. That's one truth. Yeah. And that's what we need to preach on.
I think the more we have those conversations with our leaders and with our peers within the church, I think it'll catapult us to just make a legitimate movement. Because we talk about movements and ministries, and a lot of churches talk about movements and being the move of God, right? But it's not going to start till you start with yourself, right? And you start, wanting to do that, right? And wanting to be a member of the body, right? Right. Whether you're the head, the shoulder, the body's the body at the end of the day, and you have a gift, and you can, with your little, God can do so much.
That's good.
So if you can just be yourself, humble yourself. And just say, man, like, what Caleb said to me, it kind of hurt a little bit, but I got over it. Right. You know what I'm saying? And that challenged me, and I did this, and I did that. Those are the conversations I'd like to hear more of, rather than the gossip and stuff, right? Yeah. And I think with transparency, there's transformation.
Oh, that's so good.
With transparency, there's transformation because you are literally being the body of Christ. We're
Right.
literally embodying what the Bible says.
Right.
Like I said before, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
How are you going to sharpen each other if you're not going to challenge each other? I'm not even going to use judging. I'm not even
No.
going to use that word because
Challenge.
that word is going to trigger people, and I get it.
Challenge.
Well, let's challenge each other and not call each other out, but call each other up. We got to raise this generation up and be like, yo, I'm here with you. I'm here to run the race with you.
That's it.
It doesn't matter if I come first, second, or third. Let's just finish, man.
That's it. And you just said it right. You know, one of our leaders, her vision was that she wants to be an international missionary person.
That's big.
And I know that's big. I was like, yo, that's huge. I was like, God didn't call me to that kind of stuff. And one day I talked to her upstairs in our church, and she was just talking about like, I'm right now I'm going through a bridge gap. I'm going through this. I'm going through that. And I told her, I was like, so what? I said, because you're going through this, should that stop you from the vision that God has called you to?
Yeah.
You know, should that stop you from engaging to God's story that He has for you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what you're doing is that you're blocking blessings.
Yeah.
Like you're not using the gift that God has for you. And if you're not going to use the gift that God's for you, God goes like, all right, then on to the next one.
And isn't it crazy that we give so much credit to the devil or to that person that you claim hates you, or the haters that you think you have that blocks your blessings, but in reality it's yourself.
It's yourself.
Because you just, first of all, it's yourself because you don't surround yourself with the right people.
Yeah, that's good.
If you surround yourself with the right flock, you're going to soar like an eagle.
Soar like an eagle.
But if you're surrounding yourselves with naysayers and yes men, you're going to be
a chicken
or a crow, and you're going to fly with the crows, and crows don't fly nowhere.
They don't fly, they just eat their own ways.
Exactly. So like we just got to be more intentional, I think, with intentionality and being committed. That's the word I was looking for. Being committed to what you're doing outside of your church.
And I was just about to say that. Yes.
Me personally, I like to stay committed with building community, right?
Yes.
And I'm also a big communication guy. And Pedro knows that.
Right.
Because Pedro be like, yo, Javi, you communicate everything, bro.
For real.
He'll tell me, late, you text me that I'm doing this. You text me in advance that I'm on the way for this and that da. And he's like, yo, I honor you and I bless you because of that. And I'm like, well, praise God, because that's something that was placed in my heart. Mm-hmm. Because what I saw, the fruit of that, because I wasn't like that. I was tardy all the time. I never texted people. I would forget. You know what I'm saying? I never was communicative, believe it or not. And when I started practicing that, and I started being more intentional and started committed myself to what God was calling me to do, and that's building community. Because I feel like that's like a calling that God's placed, is just building community. Just building community, having dialogue, having those conversations, having life-changing conversations. And communication is something so important, because I can't give you the benefit of the doubt if we don't have a conversation.
Right.
I can't give you the benefit of the doubt if we're not doing life together.
Right.
I can't assume things neither, because maybe I'm not asking the right questions.
Right.
And maybe I'm not reaching out and seeing how you are doing. How am I going to be a better brother if I'm not doing these things?
Right.
So when I challenge my friends, Pedro included, I'm like, yo, let's start a group chat. Let's be more committed. Like, if you want to play basketball on Mondays, man, let's
get on it.
Let's get on it.
Yeah.
You know, let's just not assume that, oh, he's probably busy at work.
No.
And then the next day you see him, he's like, yo, why didn't you call me, bro?
Right.
And then he's feeling some type of way, and he's in his feelings. Like,
right.
he thought that you were probably ignoring him or blocking him or whatever the case may be. But it was just the fact that you assumed that he was busy.
Right.
But you didn't communicate that. Had you communicated the fact that maybe he wasn't busy, or maybe let me find out if he is or not.
Right.
That miscommunication would have never happened.
Right.
So I think communication for me, and I know that it is for you, is key.
Yeah, communication is so big for me. And to be honest, like, I'm the type of person too, like, when I'm with my community, I have a big vision, but I don't communicate it clearly. Oh. You know what I mean? And that's a problem. You know what I mean? Like, just because my Enneagram is an 8. I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, right? So I'm very challenging. I'm very loudmouth. I'm vocal, everything like that.
Yeah.
But
You're
I have
like that old school football coach.
Yeah, for real. I grabbed him by the face and just yell at them and snap on them. And after the game, I tap them and be like, "Hey, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm buying pizza.
For real, I'm buying pizza later on." But one of the things that this is the perfect thing when I talk about that you talk about community,
right?
Is that my community of my friends was telling me, "Hey, Caleb, every time you have this big vision, you don't communicate it clearly to me, and it frustrates the crap out of me." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, "What do you mean by that? I'm telling you to get this done."
Yeah.
Well, you're not telling me how to get it done. You know, like you have this thing in your head, but you don't tell me how to get it done.
Yeah.
Can you imagine they never told me that? Can you imagine they never communicated that to me?
Yeah.
Then I would just be the same person all over and over. So now that I know that, okay, I have a big vision, so I got to write it down, and I got to be more detailed about it. Now it looks different, right? So then when they see it, guess what? They're happy, and I'm happy. You know what I'm saying? So you're really and when we talk about communication, it's also a love language thing. You know what I mean? Like, know your community love language. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's what I talk about. Where I talk about the church is that know your love language, right? What's your love language as a church? What do you want to be as a church? Do you want to be about word of affirmation? Then speak that, have that mission statement, have that core value. Make sure the pastors that you are hiring embody that. Yeah. Make sure the leaders that you are living with embody that. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not just about living in there. It's out there. Like the old church I used to work at, we could never drink at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's one of the toughest thing ever. Because I was like, there's times I just want to how to drink and
have a cocktail.
Right, you feel me? Like cocktail. Wine. Yeah, just because there's times after a long day you just want a cocktail or a wine. And I just could never understand. So all the 9 years, and I finally had transitioned out. And then one day I went to the bar, and then I was about to get a drink because now I'm out. Now the covenant's not with me no more.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, this guy sat next to me, and was just like, "Hey, Caleb." I was like, "Who are you?" And he was like, "Oh, I go to your church, all that kind of stuff. Hey, I just want you to know, man, I just got a recovery." That hit me so hard. I was just like, I get it now. I get why they say don't drink. Yeah. I get why they're saying, don't do this in a public setting. Because can you imagine if I would have picked that up and drunk it? In his eyes, he's thinking now it's okay. And this is a kid who's just now became a new believer at that time. Right. So now in his eyes, he's thinking oh, okay, so it's all right to drink because he's drinking, so I can drink too. Yeah. So that's why I talk about these kind of stuff because, like I said, I'm not perfect. Yeah. But those are the kind of stuff that you say that community is so important. And we as church, which is the word that says in the Bible, is that we need to raise up the saints. We
raise them up.
We don't raise them up, man. A lot of churches here in America don't raise up the saints.
That's a fact.
And it hurts me so much because that is the main primary. Yes, I tell people this all the time. It is good that we are an evangelism church. Yeah. Right? Wherever churches in America, it's good to be that way. It's good to get them and baptize them. It's good to get them and for them to accept Christ. But those people that accept Christ, are they becoming a saint? Those people that accept Christ, are they becoming a disciple? You know what I'm saying? Or are they going to back and live the way what they did back in the old days? You know what I'm saying? So that's why I tell people that then we lose the mission. We lose the value of what Jesus is, because I feel like Jesus looked over the porch of heaven like, that's not what I came down for and told y'all to do. I told y'all to raise up saints. I told y'all to raise up disciples. And all you're doing is just sitting down worrying about the numbers. All you're doing is sitting down worrying about, hey, how much tithing do I got? When can I do the next big thing, next big project? I'm going to be real with you. When can I get the next building? When can I get the next pastor? But we don't want to raise the saints. Yeah. That hurts.
A lot of us want to get to step 137 rather than step 2. After you take your first step, that's great.
So good.
You took the first step. We're in the brinks of taking the second step, but you're already so focused and obsessed about step 137.
And that's where the church lacks at.
And that's where the church lacks.
That's where the church they lack at is like, all right, now that you're a believer, after you become a believer, oh yeah, there's next step. That's cool, but are you walking with them? Are you like from the moment you accepted Christ, like who's walking with you?
Oh yeah.
Who's now showing you the journey of Christ?
And it takes committed people.
It takes committed people.
I'm so big on commitment. I'm so big on communication. I'm so big of intentionality, because without that, there is no transparency,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're not going to have that. You're taking literally something that is life changing. You're literally taking a tool, which is transparency. That the byproduct of transparency is transformation. How are you transforming lives if you're not being transparent? Because you're not communicating. Because you're not being committed. You're not being intentional. Byproduct of that is you're bearing bad fruit, and the bad fruit of that is not building community.
Right.
That's the equation that a lot of churches, not intentionally do, but indirectly do, because they just don't. They're not equipped, or don't have the right people to do that, and that's why churches fail.
Exactly.
That's why there's pop-up churches, and then they're thriving for 6 months, and then they're gone.
They're gone.
They're gone.
They're not there.
I heard about a couple pop-up churches in the Wynwood area.
Yeah.
And they're gone.
They're gone.
They are gone.
And the reason why it's like that, and for everybody that's listening, I'm gonna tell you this right now. Being a Christian is not like Disney. It ain't Disney World, bro. You don't hop on a ride and you enjoy it and it looks no.
Yeah.
Being a Christian, it's hard.
Mm-hmm. It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It's different. And I think the reason why people that come to our church don't understand that, because we don't preach that.
That's a fact.
You know, we're more of a people at churches preach prosperity. Mm-hmm. People at churches don't preach the realness. The hey, guess what? And that's why I honor my pastor. Mm-hmm. That's why I love him, because we're in a series of temptation. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? We're talking about things about what temptation does. Yeah. For some of y'all, it could be sex. And for some of y'all, it could be drinking.
Honestly, only a handful of pastors. I'm not even talking about in the state of Florida. A handful of pastors in the United States will preach that.
Right.
And I'm so blessed that Sean happens to be in that handful.
And that's what I was just about to say.
Because it shouldn't be just a handful of pastors that preach that and have series like that. But unfortunately, there's only a handful of pastors. Like, Pastor Mike Todd preaching sermons about relationship goals and talking that realness about dating in today's era and things like that, and premarital sex, and how to honor your wife and your children, your kids, and all this stuff. Like, only a handful of people pastors preach that, and it should be the other way around. Like,
should be right.
Every pastor should not be afraid to tap into that conversation, and I feel that they're afraid is because what you said earlier, they're afraid to lose butts in the seats and tithe.
That's it.
And if I want to keep it real, I'm gonna keep it real.
Keep it real, man.
They don't want to lose the tithe.
That's it.
They don't want to lose the butts in the seats because they don't want to get people uncomfortable in this PC culture.
Exactly.
In this PC era that we're in.
Exactly.
So they're afraid that they're going to get canceled. They're afraid that they're going to be in the blogs, and they're going to be, their name and their church name is going to be dragged in the mud. But you know what? Jesus is still risen, and Jesus has that message, and that message goes a long way. And these conversations do need to be had.
Yep.
Every conversation that makes you feel uncomfortable needs to be had.
Right.
Because there's no growth.
There isn't. You're
not going to see growth in a ministry. You're not going to see growth in a movement, and you're most definitely not going to see growth in the church.
And you're never really going to see the growth till you get to the kingdom. We never going to, like, as much as we talk about the stories, the success that's going on, we're never really going to understand the growth till we get to the kingdom.
Facts.
Till we get to Jesus and be like, Jesus, how did I do?
Mm-hmm.
How did I do while I was here on earth? Like, did I make you proud? That's the biggest thing I ask myself every day, is that when I get up to heaven, Jesus, did I make you proud?
Yeah.
Like, was I truthful the whole time? Was I being blunt? Mm-hmm. Was I being real? Like, even when Jesus was talking to the woman in the well, like, hey, you're sleeping around with so many dudes. Like, speak facts. Mm-hmm. He was speaking truth, but he did it in a loving way. And I think that's why I'm going back to my lead pastor, is that that's what he does. Is that he does the truth. And he does it in a loving way. And there's a lot of pastors that does that. Same thing with my Todd. That does the same thing like that. Is that, hey, I'm going to give you truth, but I'm going to do it in a loving way.
Yeah.
And that's why I tell people is that, man, like, if they can do it, what makes you think you can?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you have this amount of members at a church, they're not going to be okay with hearing that, Caleb. Nah, we just got to preach about that. Hey, they're going to get a new car
Right.
if they have faith. What?
Yeah.
Where does it say that in the Bible?
Yeah.
Then you're making Christianity look like a Disney World. You're making Christianity look like a Universal Studios, where if they do something good, they could go get a free butterbeer. It doesn't work like that, bro. It doesn't.
I love butterbeer.
I love butterbeer. Such amazing.
Is crap.
It is amazing.
It is crazy.
It's amazing.
Pedro, you've had it? No. Pedro, you need to get on.
It's a. If you never had butterbeer, matter of fact, Universal needs to pay you, bro, because we're talking about Universal like crazy.
I know, right?
So we're giving them free ads, low key. But that's the truth about it, man. Is that it's not all hands and Danny, bro. But when you have community, bro, it makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
It makes it a little better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's what I tell people all the time.
Jesus
Find the right community.
ain't worried about your followers. I forget who it was. I think I might get this wrong. Because I listen to so many pastors, aside from the greatest pastor ever, Sean.
Right.
Shouts to Sean. I actually texted him the other day, and I was like, yo, check out my pod.
Yeah, he needs to come in this podcast.
I don't know if it was John Gray or Levi Lusko. One of these. You
better get it right, bro.
I got to get it right, but I forget, and you guys could Google fact me later. But I want to say John Gray said this. John Gray was saying he was on YouTube talking about when you get to the pearly gates, if you will, right? Mm-hmm. He's like, you think Jesus is going to ask you how many Instagram followers you had? How many comments you had on your last post? This, that, and the third? He's not worried about that, bro. He's worried about what you did in your community to the person next to you. If you shoulder tapped that person and had life-giving conversations, rather than speaking death over people and worrying about what people are wearing and people doing this and that and being judgmental and all this other nonsense, like, what did you do? What did you do to bring me glory and expand the kingdom? And he's not worried about if your YouTube video got 350,000 views. You know what I mean? So that's a good point that you brought up. But it reminded me of I want to say John Gray. I probably got it wrong. Yeah. But shouts to Pastor John Gray. I love that, man.
And another thing that I realized too is that don't be afraid to be vulnerable with your community.
Ooh, yes.
You know,
matter of fact, I think I had that on my notes.
Ooh.
Like vulnerability, bro.
Vulnerability. Don't be. And I'm gonna share this from my own story.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is that recently what happened during this time? You know, I got kicked out of this home. You know, and I couldn't find a home.
This is when you were in Miami?
No, this is right here during West Palm. This is during West Palm time. As at Lake Worth. And here I am, I have a job at the Lord's place and everything, and I couldn't find nowhere place to stay. Yeah. And me knowing how stubborn I am, I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna sleep in the car. I'm just gonna be okay, you know. Like I don't wanna interrupt nobody. I don't wanna do nobody because I wasn't willing to be vulnerable.
So that the pride set in.
The pride set in real hard for me. You know, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna park at Curry Park and then I'm just gonna sleep there and then I'll be good with it. You know. So I did park at Curry Park, and then one day I texted Christian, right? And I just texted him. I just like, and I don't know why I texted him, but I was just like, you know what? Just let me text him. Let me see what he says. Right, I texted him. I just told him my situation, and I was like, "Hey, bro, this is what I'm going through," and everything like that. It didn't even take so long, but 30 seconds later, he just texted me back. He said, "Hey, bro, just come to my house. Come stay at my house." And I was like, "What?"
So what happens when?
I was in shock.
It's amazing when you humble yourself. When you humble yourself, bro, and you as a man too, because you know men are filled with pride, right?
I'm all pride.
You know. We're filled with this bravado,
right?
This certain type of swag that we got, this bravado-ness of what a man looks like, I guess. And we have pride, man. Right. And we fail ourselves and we fail people when it comes to not humbling yourself and swallowing that big pill of pride. And when you don't swallow your pride, man, you just kind of dig yourself a little deeper. Right. You dig, because had you not done that, you probably would have dug yourself a deeper hole. Right. And God knows where you would have ended up or how that story would have. And I'm sure, and I'm being real with you. I still struggle with that because there's times I feel like I put too much burden on somebody if I'm giving them my vulnerability. And this is one of those things that someone told me is like, well, if you're not putting your vulnerability or your burden on your friends, then that's when you don't trust your friends. That's when you don't trust your community.
that's mean you don't really care about your community.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're there for.
Yeah.
When it's wartime, we're there to look after each other.
Yeah, because
and I was like, wow.
When you want to put boots on the ground and you want to run that race and kind of like wage that war alongside people that are committed to going to war with you, and being committed to you, because that's such a powerful thing, because it's not only is it liberating, it's empowering. So all you soul sisters out there, man, just you guys are better in numbers. Just putting it out there. I'm just giving you a male's perspective.
So good.
You guys are you women out there are better in numbers. A lot of girls that I talk to, their excuse is, but women are so catty. That's why I have more guy friends than girlfriends.
It's bad.
And I'm like, yeah, I think that's not really what being a woman of God is, And I'm not trying to insinuate anything, but I just want to speak that truth over the ladies that are listening, because my demographic, I'm learning, is men and women. This is not a podcast for just men. It's a podcast for everyone,
right? And
I just want to just touch on that you women out there, you call yourself a woman of God. You guys are better in numbers.
Yeah.
And you guys should be empowering one another rather than tearing each other down, because
it's true.
Someone said something, and it's always about what they said or what they did and who they're talking to. Look who she's talking to. Yeah. Oh my God, I can't believe she's talking to so and so guy, and blah blah blah. Like, man, just empower each other. Speak life over that person. If you really call them,
right,
if you're really calling her a soul sister or whatever you guys use, really empower them and build them up rather than tear them down.
And you said it, and that's why I tell people, I forgot who's her name that found Boaz. What's her name again? That found Boaz. Was it Ruth or Esther?
It was Ruth, because Esther was the other one.
Do you know why Ruth found her Boaz? Was it because she had numbers? She had some sisters with her.
Sure did.
So the reason why people are realizing why they're single enough like that, well, who's the right sisters you're hanging out with? Who's the right community you have with? So that's why when you touch that, this sole point is that the reason why she found her Boaz, because the right people, the right community that was around her, the right sisters that was around her was telling her, like, that's a man that's going to treat you right. That's a man that's going to give you integrity, and that's the man that's going to really take care of you. Yeah. And that's why I tell people, and to be even, I'm not switching off the top. I'm gonna switch it off a little bit, but there are a lot of women who don't have dads in their life. They just have a mom, so they don't know what it's like to have a male figure.
Yeah, male figure, and even the love of a man.
Of a man, yeah. But you can get that, and you can understand that if you have the right community, if you have the right soul sisters, like how you saying. So I think that's the thing that I realized, and it hit me when you just said it. I was like, hold up, the reason why Ruth found that Boaz was because she had 4 sisters of her, and it just clicked when you just said that. So I think that's so important.
It's empowering for sure.
It is.
All of us need the state of the reason why I named this episode "The State of the Church Culture" is because we want to ask that question: how is the state of the church culture? How is the state of the church culture today in 2021? And some people, depending on who you ask, you'll get 100 million different answers, right? And it could be a good thing or a bad thing, but it's literally depending on who you ask, you'll just get an answer accordingly. And if you ask the person that got burned by the church, you're going to get a not so great answer. Number. And I think that to get better answers is by leading with love, leading by example, and being held accountable, being really, really about that life. Like, hey, like I have 2 people in my phone that hold me accountable.
Right.
I'll name one because he's already been named in this podcast before. So shout Mike Griffin. Mike Griffin, man, he's
a great guy.
A great leader.
Great leader.
I've known him since 2013. He was a very, very, very pinnacle person in my life early in my faith walk, and he baptized me during a J110 event, and he's an amazing person, and he holds me accountable, and he's intentional. He was committed. There was a season in our lives where he was committed to dedicating a Saturday morning to meet up and just talk.
Are you serious?
Saturday mornings, we'll meet up at whatever location, and we'll get breakfast or coffee, and we'll just sit down and talk. Sometimes we'll read a book together.
Wow.
And that's what the culture should be more of. We should have more of that rather than people getting burnt, rather than people talking down on a pastor or on a church. It's like, let's just be better.
Yeah.
There's no science to it. There's nothing that complex. Like, yes, people can be complex and people can be weird, but if I believe that if you lead these conversations with love first and foremost, it'll go a long way.
Right.
So if you're listening to this podcast, I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you, Caleb.
Oh, bro, thank you for having me.
For your words of encouragement, wisdom, and just a little bit of your story, because I believe you have an incredible story that can change a generation. So I am very honored and privileged to have you on the show. Hopefully, I could have you back on sometime in the near future, bro. I love you, man.
Absolutely.
Any last words that you may want to have?
Well, I just wanted to pray for everybody.
Yeah, let's pray
before I end, but I just wanted to say, like, again, like what Javi just said, we're not perfect. Mm-hmm. You know, if you're listening to how many long we just talk, I just want you to know that we're not perfect. You know, the goal is that we want to strive to be like Jesus. You know, it didn't say like we have to be perfect. You know, but it says that you have to strive to be like Him. Yeah. And that's our goal. So I just want you, with excellence. And so I just want you to know that our goal is not, we're not sitting here bashing churches in America. Mm-hmm. We're sitting here because if you go and read the Bible and really read it thoroughly and really check it, you know, just ask yourself, like, are we doing exactly what the Bible says? Are we doing exactly what God said and He intended out for us? So that's why I just want you to know, and then that this podcast is going to be the number one podcast in the world, bro.
Wow, so, look at that. I think that deserves a round of applause really quick.
Oh, snap. You got that? Hey. I didn't know that I could do that. I low-key throw it off. I got a little
soundboard, you know.
Okay. I thought low-key throw it off with this thing.
Yeah, that was dope. Man, I love you, bro. I love you. Again, like, I would definitely would have you on again.
Yes.
You're an incredible person.
Thank you, bro.
We're getting to know each other more.
Absolutely.
More so because of being intentional.
Yes, be intentional
to one another.
But I will say, bro, like, you are absolutely an amazing dude, man. Like, and I know that what you're doing, this ain't you doing this just to shine. Mm-hmm. You're doing this because you want to help people, man, and build it. And that's why I pray that this goes out more than you think of, you know. That's so I pray that whatever you thinking of, like, oh God, I want it to be this, I pray that God multiply it 10 times fold. So because you are an incredible leader, an amazing person, man, and I pray that God continues to use you like never before, bro. So love you, man. So can I pray for everybody?
Pray us out.
All right, well, God, I just want to just lift up everybody that's just listening to this conversation right now between me and Javi. God, I just pray for Javi. God, I just thank you for his leadership, God, for this podcast that he just threw out there for us, and it's just this is not an ordinary podcast. This is a podcast where we are real and we are genuine with one another and with you guys. So God, I just pray that you will continue to bless this podcast, and God, whoever is listening, God, if they're going through a storm in their life, if they're going through a burnt church that they've been to and they've been hurt, Jesus, I just pray that you will heal them, you will heal their heart, and you will touch them. Jesus, I pray that they don't run away from church. They'll go to a church, right? They'll go to the right person. And God, I pray that they'll find the right community. They'll find the right lifetime friends, not a seasonal friend, but a lifetime friend. Yes. So Jesus, we just thank you for everything you do, God. I just thank you for Pedro for opening this door for us, God, and just barbershop, God. So I'm just so grateful for him, and I pray that you also bless him for just being behind the scene and just willing to just see God do the work. So God, I'm just grateful for that. And God, I just thank you, and just thank you for the viewers that are listening to this. Jesus, we love you and praise you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen, bro.
Awesome. Thanks, bro.
Thank you, bro. Love you.